Chapter 24 of Billie Bradley at Treasure Cove by Janet D. Wheeler. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Ben remembers. However, the author of the knock on the girl's bedroom door was only Mrs. Wellington Up, apprehensive lest they failed to take proper precautions against catching cold. "One's apt to get careless-like in the summer," she explained, "and I sort of feel responsible for you girls, being here alone and all. I'm having Sarah was the maid, brew you a dish of hot tea. That should raise your temperature." "As though anything were needed to raise our temperature!" exclaimed Laura, after the kindly soul had gone. "I'll wager mine's 106 in the shade right now. I'd hate to have a doctor feel my pulse." "When Vi let out that scream, I could feel my hair stand straight up on my scalp," Billie said, with a giggle. "Don't do it again, Vi, or I'm apt to drop dead at your feet or something." "Oh dear, where is my comb?" "On the floor," chuckled Laura, "where you dropped it when," Vi shrieked. A few minutes later there was another knock at the door. This time it was Sarah's voice that answered their inquiry. "If you please," said Sarah, "the gentlemen are here." The conference with the boys and Ben Halcombe was held that evening in the farthest corner of Mrs. Upp's parlor. It was an old-fashioned parlor, long and narrow, providing ample opportunity for privacy. Even at that, the conversation was held in the most cautious tones. No one, unless there had been a dictaphone installed in that corner, could possibly have overheard what was said. Ben was inclined to be skeptical about the elephant rock. "Don't look like no elephant to me," he protested, as he drew the original map from his pocket. "Still and all, you may be right. Stranger things have happened." The old sailor was frankly agitated and worried by the young folks' adventure with the two men in the motorboat. "Seems like I might have been wrong about nobody knowing about the treasure but us," he said. "These men are on the track of it, sure, or they never had turned up at Treasure Cove." "They looked desperate enough to try anything," Vi observed. "Still and all," continued the old sailor, "seems to me like we've still got the inside track." But he lowered his voice to an impressive whisper. "There ain't no time to be lost." The young folks slept badly that night. Pirates filled their dreams, and mutineers, and rocks with sawed-off elephant trunks. Next day they were up bright and early and starting off for the point. The boats they had used the day before were still on the other shore. This made it necessary for them to hire two more, and their explanation to the curious owner of why they had abandoned his craft only served to make him more curious. He eyed them so shrewdly that the girls and boys were glad when they could turn their backs on him and go about their business. "Seems as though everybody we meet has guessed our secret," Vi complained. "I do believe people about here are getting suspicious of our comings and goings," Ferd said. "Up at the Blue Anchor we've been asked questions lately that were pretty hard to answer without telling too much." "Or arousing suspicion by telling too little," Teddy added. "They will begin to spy pretty soon, and then it's all up." "We know that two have already spied on us," Laura reminded him. "For all we know, they may be watching us now," Vi added. "I think Ben is right," said Billie. "If we are going to find the Marlin's buried treasure, we'll have to be pretty quick about it." As they crossed the bay and landed upon the opposite shore, they found themselves gripped by a tremendous excitement. After all, they had stumbled upon a genuine clue the day before. With what they knew, and with a little hard work and luck, what might not they discover? They found the elephant rock without too much trouble. Their implements lay beneath it, where they had been abandoned the day before. The lines on the map radiating from the circle and dot had always been a puzzle to them. Now they paced these off to the best of their ability, marked a new central point, and began to dig. Eagerly at first, expecting every moment to hear the ring of metal upon metal. But nothing happened, nothing but a steadily widening hole innocent of treasure. "They couldn't have buried it down in the center of the earth," Laura cried, exasperated. "Perhaps the treasure got homesick for China and sank clear through," suggested Ferd. For this suggestion he was rewarded only by eloquent stares from the girls. "Anyway, there's one thing sure," said Chet, resting on his spade. "There's nothing in this hole." Let's try again." So they took up one of the other lines on the map, pacing it off accurately, and tried again. They had no better success this time. Still they tried again. The hours passed, the sun grew high in the heavens, reached a point directly overhead, then began its slow descent toward the horizon in the west. Still the boys and girls toiled on. They had brought lunch with them, but they did not think of eating. The feverish desire for gold held them, drove them, left room in their minds for thought of nothing else. "Those lines are only a blind," and Billie stamped her foot on the ground, clenching her hands. "They don't point the true path to the treasure. I've felt that all along. It's a joke, a ghastly joke. For all we know, those horrible dead mutineers may be laughing at us now for biting so easily at the bait." Teddy pushed the hair back from his hot forehead and came over to her. "Don't let it get you, Billie," he begged. "It's been a terrible day for all of us, but we've done our best. If we can't find the treasure, we've simply got to grin and bear our failure, that's all." "I know," said Billie, turning away, "but I was thinking of poor old Ben. I don't believe I can bear to see his disappointment." The shadows of evening found them no nearer the solution of the mystery than before. The elusive treasure remained as securely hidden from the world as ever. Dusk was fast putting an end to their efforts for that day. There was nothing for it but to acknowledge failure. "We'd better be getting back," said Chet reluctantly. "There are rain clouds in the sky again, and I don't want to get caught as we did last night." They most certainly did not. The mere thought of such a contingency was sufficient to send them hurrying toward the boats. They had brought tow lines with them, and with the ropes had fastened the boats that had been abandoned yesterday to those they had used today. And so, disconsolate, disheartened, and at last totally discouraged, they made their way back to the mainland. As they neared the blue anchor, they thought they saw two shadowy figures disappear behind it. "Short and long, I shouldn't wonder," Laura whispered. "If they want the map, they might as well have it," Vi said dispiritedly. "Doesn't seem to be much good to us." When they neared the blue anchor, they found the old sailor awaiting them. He limped toward them eagerly, and even in the semi-darkness they could see that he was laboring under a tremendous excitement. "Something came back to me today," he explained in a low tone. "Something I didn't think at first was important, but now I think maybe it is all fired important." He would reply to none of their questions until they had reached Mrs. Opp's. There they were lucky enough to find the parlor empty. The sailor pulled a small table toward him, swept it clear of ornament, took a pencil and scrap of paper from his pocket. The young folks gathered about him wonderingly. Ben looked up at them quizzically. "You didn't find nothing today?" Although his voice rose at the end as though in inquiry, it was more a statement than a question. A single negative was enough to tell the story of that day's bitter disappointment. "I thought not," and the old sailor shook his head. "But I think now maybe I've got the key to the mystery. Maybe I haven't, but it's worth trying anyways." The young folks waited, watching Ben intently. His excitement was beginning to strike an answering spark in them. "It's something that mutineer named Joe muttered to himself only a short time before he went to meet his maker. At that time I thought he was raving. Maybe he was, but a powerful lot of truths are spoken sometimes by raving folks." An impatient movement in his tense audience spurred the old man on. It was a sort of chanty that he was singing to himself. It went like this, as near as I can remember. "Oh, it's west and it's north, then it's west once again. Sail ho, my hearties, sail ho. 10 paces true from the starting point, too. Sail ho, my hearties, sail ho." "That may mean something," finished the old sailor, a glint in his eye. "And maybe it don't. What say, adventurers all?" "I say that it means everything," cried Billie breathlessly. "Oh, Ben Halcombe, why didn't you think of that before?" End of chapter 24.